there is an extremely necessary work regarding the regeneration of human consciousness. Evolutionary cycles, as well as the development of spiritual maturity through a coherent lens of interpretation of our experiences, ultimately depends on wisdom. Wisdom is expressed in the correct and increasingly clear understanding of concepts, symbols, and themes that permeate our lives. The more we grow and integrate our experiences through an attentive and responsive as well as responsible look, the more we are able to recognize the movements, dynamics, elements, and aspects underlying our experienced reality. However, it is easy for us to get confused in our interpretations, and therefore it is also a crucial and fundamental part in the process of consolidating our learnings to reassess the sense and meaning present behind spiritual concepts that we receive and incorporate. Because way too often, knowing does not mean understanding. Thus, this cyclical reassessment is necessary as a way to filter and clean from our system perceptions and interpretations that may be old, displaced, and that may now ask for a deeper understanding. One of these points is that of oneness and the understanding that we are all expressions of the divine. In different traditions, it is even said that a seeker can achieve the understanding that he is God, that he carries within him the divine spark, the power of creation. How many people have not been dazzled by experiences of ego death, oneness, dissolution of identity, and near enlightenment? How many times have we accessed, albeit briefly, the clear perception that our consciousness is one with the whole, being an expression of the totality of existence? Integrating this type of understanding is not only important, but mainly delicate. The spiritual ego, which is a concept that refers to this identity of ours, that gains access to deep spiritual experiences, and from this begins to usurp these understandings and distort them for its own machinations and strengthening of its separation, is very intelligent. It is intelligent because it is an illusory mechanism that ultimately is serving as training and evolution for true consciousness, which can dissipate it as it recognizes its true nature. However, until this profound recognition occurs, we are subject to influences and this almost theatrical movement of performing a variety of roles. Accessing the recognition of our consciousness as an aspect of the whole often leads this ego to an initial sabotage of assuming this experience for itself, seeing itself as God. Identifying with the idea that this identified self is definitely God, and therefore confident, certain of its findings, starts to live the illusion that the identity is God. This is the fundamental distortion that here we are seeking to correct. Because if our consciousness is an expression of the whole, then the whole is an expression of our consciousness. Thus, everything is communicating, everything is dialoguing and reflecting for us aspects of ourselves, emitting signals, alerts, important communications that an arrogant identity, which thinks it is God, becomes increasingly less capable of hearing. There is an Indian parable that expresses this concept quite clearly. A disciple was in a monastery being guided by his master, practicing deep meditation. In one of his experiences, he has this lapse of enlightenment, realizing that in reality, his consciousness was God. With this realization, he talks to his master and asks for leave, saying goodbye, because now he knew his true nature and his mission had been fulfilled. The master looks at him, smiles briefly, and nods his head. On the road out of the monastery, already with his belongings, he is walking down the road and comes across an elephant, ridden by a man coming in his direction. The disciple, sure of his discovery, knowing that he was God, continues walking down the road, confident that no harm would happen. The elephant would not trample him after all. He is God, and the elephant is God. God is loving and has no intention of destroying himself. The man riding on top of the elephant yells for the disciple to get out of the way, but he does not listen and continues confidently with unshakable faith. When the elephant gets close, it hits the disciple quite hard, using its trunk and pushing him out of the way. The disciple is left with several injuries, covered in dirt, with torn clothes, and runs back to the monastery in tears. When he gets there, his master asks what happened, and the disciple falls to his feet, breaking down in tears. He expresses that he has completely lost his faith in spirituality because he taught that he had discovered his essence as God, and still the elephant pushed and hurt him. The master, after listening to him attentively, tells him that indeed he is God. But if he understood that he and everything is God, then why didn't he pay attention to the voice of God, which was the voice of the man on top of the elephant, warning him to get out of the way? This story serves, in a very instructive way, to elucidate this mechanism of how the ego can appropriate spiritual experiences and integrate them in a distorted way, aiming at its own aggrandizement, separation, and stiffening. Awakening to great revelations, therefore, is only part of the work. The discernment to experience the integration of these revelations is the other part that involves diligence and attention, which we cultivate as we mature in life and remain humble, available to learn from the great teacher that is life. Therefore, if some spiritual belief that you judge as beneficial is not showing signs of operating genuinely in your life, perhaps it is time to observe how much of this belief is based on truth. And if so, how much of this truth you have been able to integrate into your personal process. As it has been expressed before, knowing does not mean understanding. There is much joy in remaining humble, open to let life guide you. As much as we want to reach certain stages of spiritual growth, there is nothing wrong in recognizing that we have a journey ahead, which is still unfolding.